Hello, welcome back to From Soft Serve, and crap, I'm in the wrong game. Oops, my bad. I have been playing a crap ton of Night Rain, by the way. And it's amazing, and it's awesome, and it's so much fun and overwhelming, and Elden Ring on crack, essentially. But anyway, this video is about Dark Souls 1, and what I've been up to. So let's swap over to Dark Souls re-remastered real quick. Okay, we're back. And we are in Undead Burg as per usual. And I've been doing a bunch of tweaks. And what I've really been busy with, because I haven't made a whole lot of videos recently, as you may have noticed. And you can also see how this looks very broken, right? Well, what I've been doing is going through every single surface in Dark Souls 1, every model, and one by one, changing the material properties with how it handles specular maps, specifically, and converting it over to a different system that they had available, but they didn't use outside of, in some spots in Northern Undead Asylum, you had some spots in Duke's Archives, and you also had in the Depths, where they used material workflow number 1 instead of 0, and 0 was the default. And so they operate differently. But let me show you how to change this model to use the different system. And also, let me show you how to go into MTD editor, which is, I will show you where I swapped things over. So basically, these are entries that tell the game engine, or the rendering engine, what to do with them and how to handle different surfaces. So you'll see things for clouds, skies, lights, crystals. They have entries for leather, dual leather, leather, metal, and so that handles, all the armors. For the characters, you have foliage, which builds in the vertex shaders for like how they move in the wind. And so basically what I wanted to do, you'll notice with like DBHL, so that is D for diffuse, B for bump map, H for height, and then the L stands for light map. And so if you use this, it can basically support height maps for parallax occlusion mapping, and then it also supports the light map if you want to use that. I am not. I disabled the light maps because I want dynamic shadows for everything. But you'll see here where it talks about the specular map. I wanted to swap everything over to the alternate system. So if you go to DBH, I noticed that there was an entry here for material workflow. And by default, it was set to 0. And it's when I looked at the other entries that were in here. And I think if we go to A10, like sludge, and some of these specific depths, MTDs, that's where you'll notice that the material workflow was set to 1, and that's why the specular maps looked different. And I was like, oh, got it. Okay, cool. And so let's see if we can go into our project here, and let's load up Undead Burg. And I will show you, because right now I've gotten through most of Anor Londo, most of Sen's Fortress, Undead Burg, Firelink Shrine, the Depths, I think I finished, mostly. It's a lot of work. So basically, here's our Undead Burg, and I now need to go find that one room that I was in, which I believe is right here. So basically, we need to open up 2123. So here is our M10 texture file. Let's go to 1001, which is Undead Burg, and we need to open up 2123. There we go. In Fiverr Editor, or Flivver, as I've commonly said. So you'll notice this actually only has one entry, and it's set to MDBHL. So to switch it over to the preferred MTD, we will just simply switch it to MDBH. Easy peasy lemon squeezy. And while we're here, there should be another map piece, 2121. Yes, so let's open up 2121. And I think the game is actually, okay, no, we're at the menu, which is good. So you can see our little model there. Ah, I actually forgot that I hadn't swapped these over. It's good I'm going through every single model because these are things I needed to do anyway. Even if I wasn't switching over the specular maps and remaking all of them, uh, here I didn't actually, I needed to do this anyway. And so then here becomes the other issue. You'll notice a lot of them, like the DBL Edge or ALP. ALP is for anything, it's alpha. So it's anything like a stain on the floor or rubble on the floor, and it uses the transparency. And so that's what the ALP is for. Edge is commonly for anything that's like foliage. So we need to swap these over as well. So I had to basically go search in my bag of MTDs and which one would allow me to also swap those over. Because if I didn't swap those over, I'd have to use old specular maps that were the original ones or style, because they're incompatible. The way that the systems work, the two different types of specular maps, completely separate, and they do not display well. So let's go into a Sin's Fortress one I edited earlier, and I will copy because I forget what they are. They're so long. Yeah, so this one specifically that I stole is an A10 wet DSB ALP spec. That is the one I needed for anything that is ALP. So basically, I copy that over. Boom. Now, here's the benefit also of doing this is you'll notice like on MDL, this one is actually only using the diffuse map. It's not using the bump map at all, or the normal map in this case. And so by switching this over to the other MTD, we're actually allowing the bump map to be used. And so you'll just see a little bit more depth on certain floor-related, like alpha style stuff. And the same goes for Edge. Here you can see MDB, it was already using the bump map. But there's a lot of cases where they just had them turned off. I've noticed that. So that's been a lot of my work anyway. So it's really good that I'm going through every model because there are ones that I basically missed. Okay, so here's my other one I use for any edge related entry is P_wet DSB edge spec. And as I'm making this video, this is just the most ridiculous stuff. Like this is just so incredibly nerdy that no one outside of like 5 people and surprisingly you guys like this kind of stuff. So this is like a hardcore nerd video here. So let's hit that. I can't remember if I saved this one. And so we still have the game running. We should be able to log back in. And now it should look correct. Because basically why it was so bright before is how it was reading the specular map. And now it should correctly use the specular maps that I had made. Yes. So now the interior looks, yeah, you can see here I missed this portion. And that's actually what's really nice about this is it is annoying that it screws up a lot of surfaces, but the benefit is I know exactly what I need to modify because I go, oh, okay, so that's a different color. Like here, if it's red like this, that means it's using the old specular map, which the reason how you can tell that is the specular map. Let's pull that up actually, because I'll show you here's why it's color coded like that. So let's go in here and we can tell the cloth thing I was looking at is inside this room, which is 2121, which we already had up. See if this is actually, nope. I sometimes forget which window is which for the Fiverr like viewer. So I can commonly, okay, nope, it's not that one. Found it. Okay, so I'm hoping in a newer version of Fiverr Editor, they allow me to like auto zoom in to the mesh because having to find it can be difficult. Oh, wow. I think I actually, where's it? No, I think this is the right one. I did the viewer highlight on the right thing first try. Okay, so it's M10 ragged cloth, AS. So basically, yeah, the diffuse map, the specular map, and the normal map. They also list the light map, but I don't use that because the material entry here doesn't even use the light map, so that just ignores that. So now we need to go back into our texture file, so M10, And now, I'm sure by this point you can tell this is why this has taken me a long time, and I haven't made a video in a while, and I haven't posted an update to DSRR in over a week. That's because this is a very granular process. So 10, and you might even be wondering, why are you doing this? That I will get to. So we have ragged cloth, and then we have the spec map. So we're going to unpack that. And then, there we go. And here is the albedo, or diffuse map. And then here is the spec map. So here is why it's showing up red in game, is the spec map, as it is originally put or created, it is red because the roughness is handled in the red channel. And then here, actually, they had the green and blue channel completely dead. So basically, it had no specularity at all. And so you'll see here, so here we have the albedo. And so the process is that the spec map is, you'll notice it's 256 by 256, and the albedo is 512 by 512. So commonly the spec map was like half resolution. And then after my upscaling, sometimes the spec map would be quarter resolution because I had doubled the resolution on the albedo. So you just have a much lower resolution spec map. So what we can do is actually take the albedo here, and then the spec map, we actually change the resolution on it to the same resolution as the albedo texture. We pop this bad boy in the alpha channel, and then we invert it because the black here represents what will be visible in terms of specularity, and the white represents not specular. So it's essentially like shininess. And so we're going to mess with the levels here. And now I assume, like, everything I'm doing here is, I doubt, is the correct method. This is just me goofing around. So I'm fairly certain Trivia is going to text me and be like, you're goofing this up, just so you know. But anyway, here's what I've been doing. So boom, let's keep that as it is for now. And then I go back to the albedo and I copy the channels one by one. Now you might be wondering, why would you do that? Why would you not just copy the RGB and it would pop all of them in there? Well, for some reason, Photoshop is weird. And if you do that, it then doesn't let you save it as a DDS file anymore. It will basically say, oh, now it's a PSD file and there's nothing you can do with it, even if you try to hit export. So I just copy the channels one by one. And so here we have our red, green, and blue. And basically, I figured out this method by looking at the spec maps that they had already made that were using the material workflow that I wanted to switch to. So I basically looked at how they did it, and I was like, oh, okay, I think I can do that from the albedo texture. And so here we have our spec map, and we have this. We now save it as BC7. And so now you'll notice that the texture for it looks like this, the spec map. It's no longer red, because that's what was happening. Is in game, because I had switched the material setting, that means it basically is just displaying the spec map in that method, and so now it looks red. But I'm fixing that by making a new spec map. And the benefit to doing this, also let me change, you have to open up the witchy file and then change it from 1, which is set to BC1 texture compression. And then you want to switch it to 38 because we are saving as BC7. So 38 is the identifier for BC7. And so now we correctly have that. We repack the spec map. But one of the benefits to doing this is we are recreating all of the specular maps in the game at double their resolution, sometimes quadruple, because we're taking the information from an upscaled albedo texture, which was originally ported from Prepare to Die edition. So you're just getting more detail, and it fixes things that didn't have specularity in the base game. Now, should everything have specularity? No, not necessarily. Varying levels. So currently what I'm doing is sort of setting a baseline for the spec maps. I need to go in through each one, and I can tweak them more to make the specularity look like I want it to look. But for now, I'm sort of just making the higher resolution spec maps, and then I can go back later and I can adjust the levels to make them look better in game. But anyway, so we've saved that. we have repacked our ragged cloth spec map, and we now repack the actual texture file itself. We go back in game, and now the ragged cloth should not look red anymore, and it should have an actual spec map, or well, have my spec map. And so now you can see, as I spawned back in and destroyed all of the the wood here, you can now see that the ragged cloth actually has specularity, and it blends into the environment a lot better. Obviously, prior, it in the unmodded game, it wouldn't have been red, right? But it also didn't have any specularity. And now it's still pretty low resolution, so I should probably upscale the albedo, like, again. But I'll go back and do that later. Ooh, I see a mesh issue here. I'm also fixing a lot of my mesh shading mistakes, where I turned on smooth mesh shading in Blender, but I ended up just fucking up a lot of the models, unfortunately. But now I'll teleport to a couple different areas, because now you'll notice this foliage is actually now showing red again, but that's a separate issue. Also, this like sludge down here, that's a spec map I have to modify. I made it too white, and now it displays kind of wonky. So, and then here's another mesh that I have not edited yet. So basically, I'm just breaking the game a lot, but I am getting a lot of progress. It's slow going, but let's teleport to Undead Parish, because I did a lot of Sen's Fortress. I did a lot of it. I guess we can go to the front, and then I can teleport to the actual bonfire that's in it. But yeah, you can see in these rooms, you have specularity. It's a very even specularity on all of the surfaces, and I think it essentially strikes me as the original way that they were making spec maps, like in Prepare to Die edition. And so it's almost like it's non-PBR. It's like, I don't know. I feel like it's doubling down on the original way that they made spec maps back with Prepare to Die edition, where it was just more simplified. And so in some ways it might be considered worse, I think. Depends on who you ask. But I think I guess in my mind, and as you can tell, I'm talking about this, I'm still like formulating my thoughts on it a little bit. Also okay, I did fix the sun moving, or the shadows moving when you go out here. And this is still too red. I screwed that up recently, where I ended up making this too. The red channel is just a little bit too bright in Sen's. I've had a real tough time with Sen's Fortress, like getting the right colors for Sen's Fortress and Anor Londo. And the reason for that, that's a separate thing, is because I'm not using the light maps. The light maps were what gave a lot of these surfaces their specific coloring. So not using light maps means I have to manually do it. And by manually do it, I have to do it through the paramps. I have to go into the light bank, and you'll notice there's, the RGB values for the specular, for the ambient light, for the upper hemisphere, lower hemisphere, and then you have light 0, 1, 2. Basically, I have to go through all of these and craft the color that I want through the paramps. I can't rely on the light map. So I have to basically look at an image from Prepare to Die edition and then go, okay, let me try to replicate that by configuring 500 different numbers, like the tone map bank, the tone correct, the shadow, the light bank, light scattering. The fog bank is huge. I still have not nailed how the fog bank works. I've noticed that that's incompatible between Prepare to Die edition and remastered. The way they handle fog is seemingly very different. Here we go. I did upscale the Katarina armor. I'm still not totally happy with it. I still think it looks better in Prepare to Die edition, but I have done MTD tweaks to try to like nail that down. But so now you can notice there's subtle specularity on the leaves. You have the high resolution textures and specularity on the bricks and the stairs here. And you have some specularity on or a decent amount on the actual like gate here. That I have not fixed yet. I have not fixed that to be updated. So let's teleport around and let's go to Sense Fortress Bonfire. I think that looks pretty good. I still need to, I got to tweak Sense Fortress colors a little bit. We will teleport to Anor Londo as well. Ooh, yeah, the trees are kind of borked over there. Oof. But here I think it looks pretty good. Ooh, let's use my controller. I'm always used to Dark Souls Remastered basically dropping your controller inputs. Oh yeah, there's the swinging. Oop, okay, it didn't shoot me. And so you notice the specularity on the, you know, big swinging fucking, what do you call those, by the way? Big swinging pendulum something, I don't know. Let's go up here. I even modified that guy. So this boulder guy, he specifically, you have to go into his character and then into his Fiverr file for his model because he had his own ball that he spawned and that ball was not on the right material settings. So I had to then tweak that and get that over. I've also been tweaking the shadow color and how prominent the shadow is and like how the light versus that. So that's been a lot of work, but I guess my vision for this, the reason why, because as I've been doing this, I'm like, is it worth it? I don't know. But I've done so many now that I'm like, yeah, I think it's worth it. But essentially, to me, it feels like, what if Prepare to Die Edition had been able to use specular maps on everything? Because Prepare to Die Edition did not. It had very few spec maps overall. It basically had an albedo for a lot of things. It had normal maps for a decent chunk of things. And then it had spec maps for even fewer because they were making it for PS3 360 and they had very limited memory. So of course the less textures you can use, yeah, don't mind the trees. They're not correct right now. Oh, he looks cool. But I think I'm getting there. I'm understanding the material workflow, but I am switching over everything. Now, it's not to say I could change my mind and say, what if these spec maps look like shit? And I decide I want to go back to the original material workflow. I certainly could. And the benefit is, let me go back to these meshes here. So the DBH, basically all I would have to do is if I decide that, okay, I want to give another shot to the original specular map system. I could go into MTD editor. I could go to MDBH here. And I can basically change this to a 0 and then save the game or save this and then reload the game and all the spec maps will be broken again. I'd have to remake all the spec maps or put them back to their original one and then edit them. But I would want to make all of them new again because I want the higher resolution, right? That's the biggest benefit to what I'm doing here is that now they have equal resolution specular maps for surfaces. So you just get more detail. Like I think this looks pretty stunning. Like right here, I'm gonna take a screenshot. Now you'll notice there still is the moire pattern of these shadows. I have yet to 100% fix that. That is just, I think, a dynamic shadowing issue that Dark Souls Remastered has. But like here, I think this looks incredible. Like look at the surface quality and how much of the normal map and the height map, I've made sure that almost every surface is using a height map, where in the original game you had some did, some didn't. It was, you know, they were using them, but they were not using them super often. But because of, yeah, ignore those trees. Don't look at those trees. Now you'll notice the leaves are floating, but that's how it's always been. I can tweak them to make them a little bit lower, but I think this actually looks pretty incredible. I'm pretty happy with some of the visuals. I still need to tweak the trees and like the fog settings a little bit because I think it doesn't, because it's hard. You have to make sure the fog works near Undead Burg or Undead Parish because you're entering that building, and so they're right next to each other. So you have to like make sure the fog doesn't look like dog shit. It's a whole thing. I do have AI turned off, so he's not doing battle with me. But now you'll notice the Anor Londo textures here are a little too shiny. That I'm working on. Also, since Fortress here is a little bit brighter, TDB. Well, that's to be determined, but it's all. I'm in my bag. I'm tweaking stuff. But I wanted to let you guys know that I'm still working on it. It's a lot. So it's a lot of like in between night rain runs. I've been working on this. So here we go. Let's go to Anor Londo. And so here you can see my vision for Anor Londo has always been very shiny. Because it was supposed to be very, I don't know, it always felt like it is a fantasy, right? Because this is all fake. I'm still not happy with the coloring a little bit. Once again, I have to do the thing where I don't have the light maps to really back up to. And so I have to make sure that, oh good, it turned off the AI for this as well until I got to it. That's nice. You can tell in the distance here where I have not worked yet. So here the spec map is a little bit too bright, but you get the idea, is that I want the stone texture here to feel and look like you could touch it and you know what that looks like, what that feels like. That's the reason for doing spec maps like this and maybe it makes things too shiny overall. You can see those have not been modified. Those models are still using the old spec map system. So they're reading the new spec maps and freaking the fuck out. But here you can see subtle specularity on the actual like stone bricks here. And maybe it's a little bit too much here and there. Once again, I'm still tweaking. I'm messing with the other thing I'm doing is going into the actual light bank and modifying the light bank to, instead of having, I think it's 20. Yeah, okay. Basically, the overall specular values, I'm crushing. I'm basically crafting the spec maps, and then I'm crushing the specular values in the map itself, which will then essentially gloss clamp. That's kind of, I don't know if it's the correct way to gloss clamp, but you definitely get a very glossy appearance. And that balance has been really working for me. But I think it just ties a lot of these surfaces together where I need to tweak like which one has more specularity, which one has less. That one I'm still going through, but the crafting higher resolution spec maps unlocks a lot of extra detail that was not there. Okay, we'll end it on that. Basically, I'm going through every model in Dark Souls 1 and I'm modifying it. And then going through every single spec map, which means I've already gone through every albedo texture and every spec map now. And then the last thing is I do want to upscale the normal maps as well. And not do my old method of making new spec maps or new normal maps because that didn't work that well. But here I want to take the existing normal maps and then take their different channels and individually upscale the channels. And I think that should result in a higher resolution normal map that still functions the way I want it to be and not have the problems of my older normal maps I used to make. But the benefit like on these walls here is you can really like feel the grime. The specular texture had a lot of extra grime in it, specifically when it was upscaled with the albedo. And so it just really matches well. Now, an issue I've had is that in a lot of cases, it can make surfaces feel metallic when you don't necessarily want them to feel metallic. Like marble is shiny, but it is not metallic. So I admit I am still messing around with how that works. Like these stairs here, I think actually look really good and accurate to what my mind thinks that surface looks like. I'm not totally happy with the floor spec map here, but look how much like granular, like little detail is in the spec map now. And it kind of does look a little metallic-y, but I'm tweaking. I'm definitely, I mean, not in a bad way. But anyway, I'm looking at it, and anyway, hopefully you enjoyed this incredibly nerdy look at what I'm doing. And if you want to support the mod, there is a Patreon, and you get ad-free versions of these videos, and you get Google Drive links to my mods, and it does genuinely help me a lot. It's without Patreon, I wouldn't be able to do this as often as I do. I wouldn't be able to no life this. So if you want to support this mod and other mods coming up, DS3 lighting engine, whenever that appears, I will start a DS3 mod, or continue my DS3 mod, I should say. Really blow that out like I did with Dark Souls 2. Dark Souls 2 is currently still kind of on hold right now, as I'm deep in Dark Souls 1 work. So Dark Souls 2 is on a little bit of a pause there. But yeah, this I'm working on until Dark Souls 3 lighting engine comes out, which I don't know when that will be. But basically, I think I'll take this as my thumbnail image. Here's how I'm breaking Dark Souls 1.